You're listening to Dirty Feet, a podcast from No More Radio.
Vous écoutez le podcast Dirty Feet sur les ondes de No More Radio.
Hosted by,
Animé par
Allison Burns,
JD Papillon,
et Stéphanie Morin-Robert.
Stay tuned.
We're gonna move you. So today with us, we're welcoming Susan Alexander, who is the founding member of Ballet Divertimento and the executive director now. So for people who might not know Ballet Divertimento, it is a school and a choreographic center that is located close to, like right in the heart of the McGill Ghetto. So it's pretty much right downtown. It's very easy to access, and it offers a lot of different services. And it's also a school that is one of the foremost professional training locations for ballet especially. So today we'll be talking with Mrs. Alexander about Ballet Divertimento and all of the services that it offers. So first of all, hi, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, and I think it's wonderful that you offer a forum like this to speak about dance. I think dance is one of the lesser-known arts, and it's great if the general public knows that it can offer them a lot as well as those who are interested in it professionally.
So when you started Ballet Divertimento, well, it was in 1991 that
Yes.
it was first founded, and there is an interesting story behind that. So could you tell us a bit about how you got to create Ballet Divertimento in the first place?
In the first place, I never expected to have a school. It was not in my plans, but in the late 80s, I started representing Soviet artists as they were getting out at that time before the wall fell. And I was arranging for them to have job interviews at the National Ballet in Canada, the Washington Ballet, the Universal Ballet, etc. And then they said, why don't we have a school here in Montreal? And I actually said, put $100,000 on the table and I'll have that discussion, which they didn't, of course, but we ended up starting after. It just seemed that there was a lot of good talent around and that there was a dearth of training in Montreal. So I decided to jump in and see what I could do. Dance was my passion, and I felt I had a lot to give in it. So.
And you've mentioned that you were helping people from the Soviet era coming here. How were you helping them? In which capacity? Like, were you? Was this your job at the moment, or
No, I had another job in international shipping at the time, and I just started doing this after hours and more during hours. I represented them. Choreographers, I presented their work to Royal Winnipeg, the National, and Le Grand Ballet, and I arranged job interviews and auditions for them as teachers or choreographers, etc.
And how did you get in touch with them in the first place? What put you in this position where you were facilitating their immersion here? It
was just word of mouth. I'd like to say somebody must have put an ad in the newspaper in St. Petersburg or something, but people heard. The first one just asked me at a cocktail party for Le Grand, nobody will help me, blah, 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 and I said, I'll write a letter for you. So I did, and from there it went on, and I guess I wrote a good letter the first time.
And did you come from the dance world initially, or?
Yes, I trained as a child, and then I come from St. John, New Brunswick, so there weren't many opportunities there. As I said, I was accepted at the National Ballet School when I was 11, but my parents wouldn't let me go to Toronto. It seemed like going to Europe in those days. And so that sort of totally limited what I could do in dance in New Brunswick. And when I came to Montreal to go to university, I gradually got drawn back into it. I started taking classes, and then it was really my passion. And I thought at that point I would use my business studies to help in the arts in any way I could. So,
something that's really interesting here is that your story actually parallels quite a large amount of the people who go take classes now at Divertimento, people who were really into ballet, but who then were apart from it, did not pursue a professional career into it, but then get drawn back into it, especially at the school level. When I studied at McGill, I remember a lot of people going to take the classes and just being like, oh my God, this is so close to my school, and I get to dance again. Mm-hmm. So this is something that Divertimento is very well known for, the adult classes, and there's actually a lot of adult classes being given, but there's also a dance study program for people who are trying to to split their studies with their dance training. Can you tell us a bit about how this dance study program started?
The dance study program started initially with Collège Français. They started a program, and after 3 weeks they had some problem, which we don't need to get into, and they called and said, could we take it over? So I thought, wow, this is a golden opportunity. Yes. So for me, it was a program that was underfinanced and didn't work, and it was a nightmare, but I just saw it as a golden opportunity to begin a professional training program, and from there I built it into, so we started backwards. We started at the college level or cégep level, within 2 years I had gone to work with Dawson College and Collège de Maisonneuve, which were more solid and where we could build a better program. And I also like the idea of being a hub and offering. I always want to be very democratic and offer dance to everybody, so I wanted to offer it to English-speaking and French-speaking, and it's worked perfectly in that way. After that, in about 2002, we started, I approached a couple of high schools, and we started working with Collège de Montréal, and after that I worked with Edouard Montpetit, so we built a high school program with them. These students are passionate about dance, or they want to explore the dance world. You're not sure at that age if you want to go on to a professional career or not. But I think if you have the passion, it's worth exploring. So they do mornings. They're at the high school level, does their academic studies in the mornings, and then they come to us from 2 to 5. And the college does the reverse. They are with us from 8:30 to 12:30 every day, and then they do their academic studies in the afternoon. And it's worked very well in that way.
Those kind of programs are very, they're hard to find, because lots of times you find yourself, as a high school student, sometimes your only options are a fine arts high school, which doesn't always get the caliber of training that a center like Divertimento can offer. Or at the cégep level, you have to leave the city and kind of... which just brings about different costs, different stresses. So it's a really interesting concept that you luckily fell into in order to give this opportunity. It's amazing because you don't always see vocational study programs for dance.
Yes.
So it's interesting to see that that's there, because that just feeds. It's a little bit more of a balanced way to learn how to integrate this artistic practice into your everyday life, because they have to balance their school and travel and schedule. So.
Yes. It's always been very important to me that dancers are educated as well. And in our time, they didn't. They often didn't finish high school. They got into a company and went on. I think that really handicaps you at the end of your career, whether it's at 30 or 40, to go on and have to not even have high school. You can't think about going to university. And I think programs, in the U.S. there are a lot of university dance programs. There are a few in Canada, and we're really behind in that sense. I think one of the special points about Ballet Divertimento's dance study program is that we're able to take students who haven't necessarily been training every day since the age of 10 or 11. They're artistic, if they have the physical requirements, of course that's necessary. But we found with working slowly and working very anatomically, we can get really good results with the kids. And I would say we're a ballet school, but we do a lot of contemporary work. I think nowadays a dancer has to be trained in both. They have to be equally strong in contemporary technique, which is a technique, and in classical ballet as well. And the vast majority of our dancers, I would say over 80%, are going to go on to be contemporary dancers. But they've had a strong ballet technique correctly taught, so they know they have a lot of information about their body and how to use their body, and I think it translates very well in any work they're going to do.
It's interesting because you spoke earlier about your work with the Soviets.
Yes, the Soviets.
And then there are a large number of Eastern Europeans in the ballet faculty. So you have this very old, it seems, so I don't want to misspeak, but it seems you have a very old school ballet training, but you're very forward thinking in how you want to offer this education and this opportunity to the dancers. So it's amazing to hear you speak about it.
I think I have really gone out of my way to see what are the latest in training techniques. I go every year once or twice to Europe, and I visit schools, not the big schools. I visit Munich, Stuttgart, Hamburg, schools of that size, the medium schools that are producing wonderful dancers, and in the U.S. and through Springboard, maybe we'll talk about that after, but I know most of the university programs and what they're producing. So when you say sort of old-fashioned Soviet, there is that old droopy white ballet mentality. We don't have that at the school.
Okay.
But the thing is that I believe ballet has to be taught correctly, and there's not ballet for modern dance there's not. It's like saying you do lesser classical music training because they're going to be in jazz. No, you don't. You learn it correctly,
right.
And then the instrument that you're forming is trained properly, and then it can do anything. And I think the thing that also stands out about our program is that we work very anatomically. The dancer knows what muscle to engage, etc., and then they become so involved in the process, and we have very few injuries working in this way. Instead of just saying, pull in your stomach or whatever, we access the muscles, and we work very much in that way so that they're creating their own alignment, knowing how to do it correctly and not just following.
Right.
Ballet's been taught for 200 years by shut up and do what I say and follow me. That we don't work in that way. We work in using the body correctly.
Okay.
And throughout the years, how have you seen the program and the teaching methods evolve? Do you feel that the way the teachers were teaching back in 1991 compared to now, how did that change, and where did you and the teachers get that new knowledge? Where did you sort of flesh that out?
Well, as I said, I traveled a lot, and I've worked for about the last 8 years now with Alex Usurliak, who was the director of the school in Stuttgart and worked with John Krenko. And he is one of the top pedagogues in Europe, and he's come many times to spend 2 weeks in the fall and 2 weeks in the spring working with my teachers. And all this work on anatomy has really come out of his teaching. When I first met him in Zurich, he was directing the school there. I said to him at the end, I said, I don't know if I can afford to bring you, but I don't know if I can afford not to bring you. And he said, don't worry about it, I'll come. So since then, we've worked a lot. And that's great for the teachers because we're always evolving in teaching. And the demands of dance have evolved so much now. It's there's no classical ballet dancer now. Every company is doing so much different repertoire that we have to cross-train. We've brought in Pilates, we've brought in different ways of moving, etc. They need to know contact improv. They have to do floor work, even if they're ballet dancers. And I think still it's been very slow, and I think most ballet schools do a little bit of modern, and they teach ballet. I try to give the dancers as much as I can 50-50. We're probably 60-40 now, but that is the model for producing the dancer today.
Yeah, you see it in the work that's presented professionally in that
Yes.
tours, is that a lot of times you'll be reading the bios of the dancers, and they're classically trained in ballet, and then you see like workshops that they've taken or choreographers that they've worked with, and it's almost a complete 180 away from their classical training because, as you're saying, that's the dancer of today.
Yes,
they have to be completely versatile.
If you're working with Jose Navas, Marie Chouinard, definitely contemporary, but they want lines, and they want people that can point their feet, and they want that they use their body well and big in space, etc. I mean, the key thing today to get a job is to move. They're looking for movers. And ballet can be kind of rigid sometimes, and that's certainly an element I'm struggling with always with the teachers now, and we're trying to grapple how do we get the dancers moving. I mean, we can't be so focused on technique that they don't move, because by and large, that's what you need to do today.
Right.
And improv is so important as well, as most dancers now take part in the creation. They're no longer just the instrument. They are actually creating as well.
And with the students who go into the program more interested in ballet, in very classical ballet, is there any type of system to help them in their transition? Because Montreal is not especially known for its ballet scene. There's only one big ballet company that's established. Because I know that a lot of the people who studied at École Supérieure de Ballet find it difficult afterwards to continue their training, to find work opportunities in Montreal specifically.
Yes. It depends on the students. We really try to treat everyone individually. I've sent the more classical ones, I've sent off to Europe to work in. Some have gone to the school in Zurich when Mr. Oserliak was there. And I've built up some connections with these schools that I visit in Europe, too, so that we can send a student there if they're ready for it. If they want to go on in classical. Most will go on in contemporary, so we've had dancers go on to Juilliard, to the Alvin Ailey School, to Toronto Dance Theatre, and to Ryerson. I think those are really strong programs. And some dancers are ready to go into a company, and that's happening more and more, but certainly in the initial years they were ready to get into a top school. So we would kind of focus in the last year and a half of the 3 years preparing them for auditions for those schools and to see how far we could go with them. And it was always a great project and challenge to see, let's see if we can get you into Juilliard. What is it going to take?
Right.
And
well, the idea of transitioning your students, was that part of the impetus for Springboard?
Absolutely. That's so many students graduate and they're lost. And dance programs can be so intensive, you may know from your programs, that they've barely had time to go and see performances. They don't have the money to go and see performances. How do they know who they should audition for? And it's like a full-time job to get a job, and yet they have little seminars on putting their CV together, etc., but they need much more. Springboard started on a February winter day. I was speaking with a colleague of mine, Alexandra Wells, who teaches at Juilliard, and she was saying, "Oh, Susan, my third-year students, they've done all the summer camps. They don't need more training. They need to know about companies. How can, they have to prepare. They'll be auditioning next year, and they don't even know what they should be auditioning for." And so we thought, oh, yeah, let's try to set up an apprentice program or something. And indeed, we called Springboard the Apprentice Project at first. And it was just a project to try something. And I said, okay, there's a lot of companies in Montreal. Let me make a few phone calls. So I always start at the top. So I called Gradimir Pankov, the artistic director of Le Grand Ballet, who had just started. It was his first year there. And I said, Gradimir, we have this apprentice project, and it would really help. If you could take one dancer, it would open the doors at the other companies I know. It would really help. And he sort of looked at me the way he does, and he said, no, I'll take 4. So, wow, we didn't expect. So we had it up and running that first July with 22 dancers, and we thought it would take a year to get to. The companies love it because they get to audition dancers for 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, so they really know what they're hiring. You do an audition and work with them for a few hours, you don't know what you're getting.
Yeah.
But after 2 weeks, you see them in your work. And for the dancers, not only do they get to experience maybe being seen by from 10 to 15 companies in that 3-week period and work with maybe 8 of them, they're seen where they would shine. Because some dancers in an audition class, they'll be cut immediately.
Yeah.
And yet, when they're on stage, you can't take your eyes off them. This allowed them to be seen. And we've had dancers every year hired off the stage. Yet if they auditioned for that company, they would be gone in the first cut.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing is the transformation. Some dancers come in thinking they want to be a ballet dancer, or they see themselves in a certain type of company. Then they work with Jose Navas, for example, and they fall in love with his process and that type of movement, and they find their path. And for me, that saves them a year of auditioning, maybe going in the wrong direction, wasting their money. Here, they get so much knowledge about where they work best and the type of work that is best for their bodies and who likes them. It's very important. If a choreographer likes you, that's a good way to start.
Yeah.
And instead of trying to get into somewhere where they don't really...
They have to.
Yes.
They may not be able to find their niche with a certain company.
And some dancers will wait and try again the next year,
Yeah.
etc., when they should make the decision and have the information and know not to. So I think it's really saves dancers a year in auditioning. And now we have European companies, and we had several invited to go to auditions in Europe last year, and 3 or 4 were hired. So it's really great in that way.
And the program, the Springboard program, keeps growing also with the number of choreographers that you bring in. It seems like every year. This year, how many did you have?
We had 9 principal companies, and we had 7 emerging choreographers. I think we're going to go back to a smaller format. That just happened because it was a year there were phenomenal dancers, and we hated not to take these great dancers, so we added a company at very late in the process. And I think we'll go down to 7 or 8, and maybe back to 5 or 6 emerging choreographers. But it's hard to turn down talent. But I want the project in a way to remain elite, and I want it to know each dancer who's in there and see them and have an interaction. When there are too many, some get lost. And I think, they're there to be seen and to learn as much and get as much feedback as they can, and that's our job to do.
Before, when we were outside, as we were coming in the building, we touched a bit upon the quality of dancer that you're looking for and that the companies are looking for to take part in the Springboard project. That's just something I want to talk about right now. It's the idea of dancers that are either stage ready or performance ready in a certain respect, and that the companies are looking for, like you mentioned, Jose Navas or Maria Chenard, they're looking for people with lines, and other people are looking for more versatile. I just want to hear more about the process to hand select the participants in Springboard.
Okay. When we first started the auditions for Springboard, because it's evolved and we've learned a lot over the time, we used to do a ballet class, and we'd make our lists, and then we would start work with choreographers, and we'd take the list from the ballet class and throw it out.
Okay.
We're looking for movers. And so now the dancers have to warm up. We provide a studio, and they do work with 3 different choreographers. So we throw really different work at you, from Rubber Band to Jose Navas to, I don't know, something from Les Grands. So you're doing really different work. We're looking for chameleons. We're looking for people who are just going to go for it and will take no matter what you throw at them and go. Fall on the floor, great. It's more exciting than standing there, that type of thing. So now we just look at them in choreographic work, and we bring one choreographer to New York, Montreal, and Toronto, so we have a baseline to measure everyone on.
Okay.
And
is it? I don't want to pigeonhole anything, but is there a certain kind of dancer that you're looking for to participate? In terms of, like, you mentioned chameleons, but I mean, we do have 2 major university dance programs in the city, and I know from experience that not many of them end up in the Springboard process. And I just want to talk a little bit about not the reasoning, but just kind of just where we're at as a country and a city in terms of post-secondary or pre-professional dance training, and how that affects participation in Springboard.
Well, first of all, in Springboard, we take all kinds of dancers. Every race, every height, size. I mean, there's a certain aesthetic, but tall, short, every type. This year we were casting for 9 different companies that all have very different needs for the type of dancer. One from Germany was much more contact improv based, so that's probably something that is more in line with what is done in Montreal. So that would be a perfect company for a Québécois to work with, for instance. So no, the dancers are, and what's great, they're all great dancers, but they're so different. And I think it takes away the stress. It's not like an audition where everybody's trying to be the same for one company. There's all different companies. So there are barefoot dancers, there are point dancers, they're all mixed together and they work together, and I think it's freeing, very freeing for them in a way. They just love that aspect of it. Speaking about Montreal, I think that we're also looking, and the companies are looking for highly technically trained dancers. We don't have that in Montreal. We're not producing that. We're producing a different type of dancer in Montreal, more theatrical, like theater dance, that type of thing. So it's difficult for us to find candidates every year. I also think that the people in Quebec who should be auditioning don't audition, maybe because it's here, or maybe they think it's a ballet program, which it is absolutely not. We don't do any ballet. It's all contemporary work. And we just don't, it's very hard to try to get those dancers to come to it. And yet they make contacts. I mean, they want to go to New York, they might get invited to do a project with one of the emerging choreographers for 4 weeks in New York. Well, that's great. I mean, these are... The networking the dancers do is one of the biggest payoffs. Then they can go to Toronto and work on a project, and here and there. And the emerging choreographers, many of them, probably their whole casts are from Springboard.
Which
whether they're Canadian
amazing,
or... Yes, yeah.
Can we speak a bit about the emerging choreographers and how that was that always going to be part of it when you started Springboard, or is this something that
no,
came
we
out
didn't
of?
have it when we started. I have to say, my colleague Alexander Wells in New York is always coming up with these ideas, etc. So the first couple of years, dancers could apply to be an emerging too. So we thought we would try that to see how it went. And that's really tough because you're dancing all day and then trying to create at night. And then we thought, well, let's see if there are some emerging who would just like to come and work. We have superb dancers. They'll have studio space. So many of the emerging are working around everybody's working schedule or school schedule. Here they'd have the same time every day for 3 weeks, and we'd have a mentor to work with, and their work would be presented on stage alongside the major companies. And I'll say after for the showing, but it's a great opportunity for them to have their work seen. Indeed, one emerging was commissioned by a dance company in the U.S. to do a work for them out of it. It doesn't happen all the time, but and it's come pretty close maybe this year, and I don't know what will happen, but there might be one who's hired to do a work for a company here in Montreal.
And are those emerging choreographers mostly from New York, or are they mostly from Montreal, or a bit of both?
It's open to everyone. Believe me, I'm on the board of Dad's Transit, so I speak to all the graduates. I go to UQAM and talk to them. I've gone to LADMI and talked to them. Most of the ones from Montreal have been handpicked. I go and see their work and I say, Alexander, we have to, and then I talk to them and try to bring them in. Again, they're not applying so much from Montreal. I have to say now that the emerging choreographers are very emerged, and many of people who are applying already have their own small companies, etc., and are working. So we try to have at least one from Montreal every year, and usually we have to literally go out and pull them in to come. And that's sad for me, especially being in Montreal. And with this wonderful format that they get to work with, it's changed some of the emergings. Once they work with great dancers, they realize how much further they can go artistically, and it's helped some of them go on to a new level with their companies. For instance, Kyle Abraham, he was presented in the Dance Dance series this year in Montreal, dancing at Place des Arts, and he's one of our emerging. And for him, that was a pivotal moment to see what he could do or achieve once he had great dancers. So I think it's so wonderful. It's a wonderful opportunity, And some emergings, Kate Hilliard from Toronto, but she presented in New York and was invited to do an evening with one of the other emergings from New York. So sometimes those things happen as well, which is fantastic. I mean, how good is that for looking for grants from the Canadian government if you've had a season in New York? So I think there's so much to offer, and I really feel in Quebec or in Montreal, dancers aren't taking advantage of that. And, we bend over backwards to try to they have to have the technique as a dancer. And but we have several from the École de Danse de Québec and from LADMI every year who come. But I still feel the ones who could most benefit and maybe even get a contract are not coming, which is unfortunate.
Hopefully that'll change.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah.
And on top of that, there's one of the interesting aspects of Divertimento that I've mentioned from the start was classes that are open to everyone, and that brings in a lot of people who miss dance or people who need dance during the summer and who don't get to train. So people studying, or even for professional dancers, there's not any professional classes happening during the summer, so they get to go to Divertimento. Can you tell us a bit about those classes, what kind of classes there are, and a bit more about the adult program?
For me, in the adult program, the most exciting thing is a class I started about probably 10 years ago now called Introduction to Ballet. There are so many people who always wanted to dance and never had the opportunity in their life, and they're kind of embarrassed or hesitant, or, I can't, I'm 35, or I'm 40, I can't dance. But this class, and we always say, no, it's from the first step into the studio, people that are there of your age, it's your chance to explore it. And I thought every school in the city would copy me. Now they're starting to a little bit, but it just took away all the fear from people, and I think it's so wonderful. Anyone can get so much out of dance, from posture and alignment to just exercising with beautiful music, the camaraderie and the discipline. And I think it has so much to offer. And we have about 8 levels in ballet now. I mean, people work their way up to it. And we have some marvelous teachers, one in particular, and I think she makes people feel like they're on stage at Place des Arts. She just has that special aura about her that no matter if you're 200 pounds or 100 pounds or whatever, she finds the grace and movement in you and brings it out. And it's wonderful for people to experience that. And ballet can be open to anyone. Anyone can do it. We're not asking, the great feats of tricks and all of that type of thing, but just to work correct with a good posture, and it works the whole body and stretches the whole body, and it has so many benefits for anyone, and with beautiful music, and to dance in a group, what could be nicer?
Yeah, well, like you were saying, you're very democratic in your approach at the school, and that is probably the biggest harbinger of that, is that idea that you can just bring anybody into a ballet class and show them the benefits, and it's an amazing thing to have in the city.
Thank you.
And you also have a brand new website that's up and running now.
Yes, we launched it last week, and I'm very proud of it. We worked hard on it, and I think it's much more accessible and easier to navigate, and I hope it reflects the school, and I hope people will be drawn in by it and come to try. I think it's important, if you feel the urge within you, go and try it, explore it. You have nothing to lose, and try a dance class. And I think 90% of the people will stay and enjoy it.
So for people who are interested in Ballet Divertimento, who are curious about taking classes or discovering more about Springboard, how to apply, all of that, they can go visit balletdivertimento.com?
That's right, yes, that's the website.
Perfect.
Great. Well, that's what we have time for today, and we really appreciate you stopping by.
It's a pleasure.
So,
thank you.
Thank you for your time, and yeah.
So just to remind everyone, we had Susan Alexander from Ballet Divertimento with us today. The school is located in Montreal. If you're interested, you can go to balletdivertimento.com. And that's it. Thank you so much for coming on with us today.
You're most welcome.
Dirty Feet is recorded every week at the Montreal Improv Theatre. Check them out at montrealimprov.com.
Dirty Feet est produit et animé par
Produced and hosted by Alison Burns,
JD Papillon,
et Stéphanie Moret-Robert.
You can find out more about our show at nomoreradio.com, follow us on Twitter at Dirty Feet, and find us on Facebook at Dirty Feet Podcast.
Vous pouvez écouter tous nos épisodes sur notre site web ou vous pouvez vous abonner également sur iTunes à notre podcast.
Listen to past episodes on website or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes.
While you're there, be sure to give us a rating and or leave a comment to help us spread the word.
Tune in next week for a whole new show.